And welcome back, everybody. This is Rusty here with the Rugby Review, and this episode we're going to be going over the quarterfinals for the Investec Champions Cup. So let's take a look at the bracket for the quarterfinals for the Champions Cup, and the matchups are as follows. So the first matchup, not technically the first matchup of the weekend, but starting in the top left, the first matchup was a top 14 matchup between Bordeaux and Toulouse. Underneath that, we had a Premiership matchup with Bath versus Northampton. As we go to the other side of the bracket, at the top, we have Glasgow versus Toulon. And then underneath that, the final game on this bracket is Leinster versus Sale. So again, those were all four games for the quarterfinals that took place. And let's take a look at the results. And so here we have the results of all four games for this weekend. Let's start with the Bath-Northampton game, simply because that was the first game of the weekend. So again, with Bath-Northampton, this was a great game. 84 points scored in an 80-minute game. Lots of scoring, highly entertaining. Game was going back and forth almost the entire game. More scoring in the first half than the second half. Defense picked up a little bit in the second half. And then as the game wore on, I guess fatigue started to set in for Northampton, and they started to pick up little penalties during the latter parts of the game. And then in the final 10 minutes, Northampton got a yellow card, which did Northampton no favors and allowed Bath to take the lead and get the victory. And so as we look at the stat sheet here, this is very even across almost all of the stats here. Tries scored, very comparable. Bath did have an advantage in possession and territory during the course of the whole game, which made Northampton have to absorb a lot of pressure on defense with the possession and territory advantage. So it's not a surprise to see that Northampton was making more tackles during the course of the game than Bath. Missed tackles, a lot from both teams, but not really comparable. Northampton definitely has a fair number more of missed tackles than Bath does. However, Northampton has an ever so slight edge in post-contact meters. Clean breaks, very similar. And then, as we look at these last three stats here, turnovers, 1 favors Bath. Bath had 6 turnovers, 1 to just 2 for Northampton. Bath only had 11 turnovers lost to 18 for Northampton. And then what I think is the biggest difference maker in this particular game, penalties conceded. Bath only had 9 penalties conceded to 14 for Northampton. I think that penalties conceded edge in Bath is what gave them that slight advantage. More penalties you give away, more free yardage you give away, and Bath was able to take advantage of those extra free yards during the course of the game from Northampton. So congrats to Bath for securing the victory and moving on to the semifinal round. So let's take a quick look again at the scores here. So our next game is between Glasgow and Toulon, another super close game where we see Toulon just edging out a victory against Glasgow at home nonetheless. So let's look at those stats here. And again, very similar. Well, let me take that back. Just like the Northampton-Bath game, super close game, was a lot of action, not necessarily as high scoring, but very close competition. One team would score, then the other team would score. Very physical game, a lot of tackling, a lot of contact here. And then I will say Toulon was very, very, very ill-disciplined during the course of this game. I'm a bit surprised it didn't come to bite them in the butt. However, Toulon bucked the trend of French teams not playing well on the road and got an absolutely amazing road victory over Glasgow. So, again, as we look over the stats here, this game was decided by 3 points. It's a very even, close competition between the two teams. As we can see, tries scored, 4 for Toulon, only 3 for Glasgow. Possession had a slight edge towards Glasgow, however, territory was favoring towards Toulon in this situation. And again, this was a super physical game. Both teams ended up making north of 200 tackles apiece. That's partially because of the ill discipline on Toulon's part. In addition, Glasgow had a very large number of handling errors, so each team is kind of coughing the ball up, and giving the other team opportunities and forcing themselves to play on defense a bunch. So, is what it is. Post-contact meters is one of two stats that I see where Glasgow truly has a very big edge. Over 100 more post-contact meters for Glasgow than Toulon, 482 for Glasgow, 370 for Toulon. So, again, despite how even this game was, despite how much tackling all teams were making, Glasgow was still able to make a huge number of meters during the course of this game. I'm pretty surprised that Glasgow wasn't scoring more, but Toulon was showcasing a bend but don't break style of defense this particular game. So anyway, as we look a little further down, clean breaks pretty even. Toulon has an edge in turnovers won, and again, large number of handling errors for Glasgow on the day. They had 18 turnovers lost to just 11 for Toulon. It's a lot of handling errors. Toulon's a pretty good team. You give them that many opportunities, they'll take them. But on the flip side, Toulon had 14 penalties. Just an absolutely massive number compared to Glasgow only having 4. So, despite Glasgow having a lot of handling errors, Toulon's ill discipline evened it out. And as luck would have it, Toulon got the last say, the last score, was able to secure the victory and move on to the semifinal round. So let's go back to the score sheet here. And our next game is the Leinster versus Sale game. Not much to say about this one because this was the only blowout of the weekend here. And so I will say it was a low-scoring, very defensive first half. It was very close competition in the first half, and then I don't know what was said at halftime, but whatever was said in the Leinster locker room at halftime was the right statements to say, and Leinster absolutely ran away with this game in the second half. Now, the one thing that did help Leinster is Sale got a yellow card just before halftime and just after halftime. So Leinster was able to use that numbers advantage and really just blow this game wide open. And as we look at the stats here, it's a very dominant game by Leinster. Sale had to be on the defense a lot. Leinster got a lot of opportunities, a lot of scoring opportunities that took them, and the score reflects the dominance of Leinster in this particular game. Leinster scored 6 tries to just 1 for Sale. Leinster had over 60% possession, close to 60% territory, so that's a huge difference in possession plus territory there. Sale had to absorb a lot of pressure defensively, as seen by the 186 tackles that Sale had to make to just 77 for Leinster. With all the possession in territory that Leinster had, it's not really a surprise to see the amount of post-contact meters that Leinster had in comparison to Sale. Just a massive difference between the two numbers there. Now, Leinster did not have a large number of tackles made, but they had a lot of missed tackles in comparison to the number of tackles made. Fortunately for Leinster, that did not bite them in the butt this week because 21 missed tackles on 77 made tackles only translated to 2 clean breaks for Sale. Whereas Leinster has 11 clean breaks on 27 missed tackles for Sale. So, again, just a hugely dominant game for Leinster this week, and they just marched right on into the semifinals. So, good win for Leinster, and congrats to making the semis. And so our last game of the week, the Champions Battle. We have Bordeaux versus Toulouse. So as you could imagine, this was a very close competition, very tight competition. The only thing that ended up giving Bordeaux a true advantage during the course of this game is the fact that Toulouse had a 20-minute red card at one point in time, and during that 20-minute red card period, Dupont got a 10-minute yellow card. So Toulouse down to 13 at one point in time, a high-octane offense from Bordeaux. You're missing 2 people on the field with Toulouse. Bordeaux does not need a second invite to just go storming down the field and extending their lead, securing their spot in the semis. So, obviously, there's really no point in time where I can just say, oh, before and after the red card here. That's okay. So, again, 4 tries for Bordeaux to just 2 for Toulouse. Toulouse, interestingly enough, had the slight edge in possession and territory, forcing Bordeaux to make more tackles during the course of the game. Despite Bordeaux playing a little bit more defense from a possession standpoint, was more post-contact meters, a significant number more of clean breaks. In addition, the discipline for Bordeaux this week was much, much better than Toulouse. Only 5 penalties conceded for Bordeaux to 11 for Toulouse. So again, really strong game by Bordeaux. This was a close game until Toulouse was down to 13 for a period of time, just allowing Bordeaux to score a few tries, extend the lead, and secure their spot in the semis. So with that being said, let's look at the semi-bracket. And so here it is, the semi-bracket. The semifinals will be played in like a week or 2 time. So we have Bordeaux versus Bath on the one side, and on the other side we have Leinster versus Toulon. So that's it for this episode. If you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. Give the video a thumbs up if you don't mind, and hit that subscribe button if this is something that you enjoyed, and please feel free to share this if you know somebody that may also be interested in this. Have a good one, and I will see you next time.